And now we're about to meet the most exotic and probably the least well known on this beastly list. And that animal's name is Mr. Muggs. Born in 1931, Jim Jones grew up in rural Indiana, and he was a really weird kid. He spent a lot of his childhood pretending to already be a preacher. He was torturing and abusing animals before he would raise them from the dead. In 1955, when he was 24, Jim had a small flock of faithful followers, and he had founded his own church, which we all know would come to be known as the People's Temple. He had funded it all through a rather bizarre and ambitious venture. He was going door to door selling pet spider monkeys that he had imported from South Africa. South America,
Yeah.
sorry. So there's an early link to those who wonder why Jonestown ended up being in South America. So he's selling these spider monkeys for $29 each. The man is
bargain.
literally engaging in monkey business. But he would use it as a sideline for his church because whilst he's in the homes of the unsettled monkey buyers, these poor innocent housewives, he would just casually either show them a Jonestown tape or like not a Jonestown, a People's Temple tape, or he would pull out his his Jonestown literature and he would show them that.
Yeah, I read that in Indianapolis, he would ride around on his bicycle with a cage of monkeys in the back. And it was such a comical sight that kids would throw rocks at him because it was kind of funny. But with his cute merchandise, he often got his foot in the door. I mean, a lot of people would listen to his pitch, and he sold quite a few of those monkeys, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Well, of course he did. I mean, he's very affable. And I must say this about the young Reverend, very handsome. He's like got the Asiatic eyes. He kind of looks like an Asian Elvis.
Yeah, he's very charismatic. He does look very Asian, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's hot. I probably would have gone to the church. He would often give away these monkeys to church members who would bring in the most new members, and that's how he bragged that this method netted him 300 followers. I wouldn't want a monkey, though.
No.
No fucking way. I hate them.
They bite and they throw their feces around.
Just like Caliban.
No, I was just thinking that. At least Caliban just takes a shit and puts my sock on it. He's not picking up the shit and literally throwing at me.
That's the next move he'll start doing.
Yeah, once he
He'll
starts
learn that.
throwing shit at me, I'm getting rid of him. He's being rehomed.
The scheme basically stopped when the animals started arriving dead. So in April of 54, 3 monkeys docked, but only 1 was alive. A week later, there was 7 more monkeys. 3 were just barely alive. Jones balked at paying the $89 air freight bill assessed on the original 7 monkeys, and he abandoned them in the customs warehouse here in the basement of the federal building, so the Indianapolis Star reported. To the rescue came a systems customs colleague, Eugene J. Ocon. Ocon sent an underling to buy some bananas. He mixed the bananas with some brandy that he'd confiscated, and he fed the concoction to the monkeys. An hour later, he said, the 3 animals were able to sit up and chatter softly amongst themselves.
What, so he got the monkeys drunk?
Yeah, I mean, if you're dying on your way out, wouldn't you want a shot of brandy?
It's the least you could do.
It sounds like a nice cocktail, actually, like a banana-y brandy cocktail, like something very tropical. I'm sure the monkeys enjoyed it. By 1969, the church had opened its own animal shelter called the Redwood Valley Church Animal Shelter. Took in all kinds of animals, dogs, cats, horses, turtles. And most of these animals, they were dropped off anonymously in front of either the Joneses' house or the church because it was all on one huge property. Local vets would pitch in to help heal the sick ones, and either a church member or Jim Jones himself would adopt the animals. There's tons of sermons where Jim talks about his house being filled with animals. So these are quotes from 2 of his sermons. The first one's from August of 72, and the next one's July of 73. So he said, some are here because they were attracted by our animal refuge shelter. We've got all kinds of little things down there that are being mended, wings that are being mended, and legs that are being mended. And every little animal that was shoved aside, we take in. His next sermon, he said, it's wonderful. In each service, every service, we distribute animals, cats, dogs, the unwanted, the mixed people. That's what I am, mixed with everything under the sun. So the little alley cats and the alley dogs, I'm an alley human, and I feel very much for these animals. I dig it. Like, yeah?
Yeah, he's passionate about animals. That's one thing I agree with Jim Jones on.
There's a lot of things I actually agree with Jim Jones on, but I could talk all day about it. Despite rumors that Jim would largely tell himself, Mr. Muggs was not rescued from an animal testing lab or anything else as grisly. Mr. Muggs is 18 months old when Jim and his family, on their way back to San Francisco from an LA in 1971 or 72, picked him up just simply from a pet store.
Well, I think you need to tell the audience here what kind of animal Mr. Muggs is. Some people might recognize the name, but I don't know if people even know what kind of animal Mr. Muggs is. And this is what makes him like the most exotic creature that we've talked about on the show so far.
We were talking about spider monkeys, but this is a step above a spider monkey. This is a chimpanzee.
Yeah, it's amazing that he picked up a chimpanzee, a chimp, in a pet store.
Yeah, I can't quite believe it either. I wonder when the rules changed that they couldn't have chimps in pet stores in California anymore.
Yeah, I'd like to. So he's selling spider monkeys for $29. How much did chimp go for? Like $79?
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, they bought him. He was wearing a diaper when they brought him out to the family car, but the diaper didn't stay on for very long. And he shit inside the car all the way back to Redwood Valley. And as Stephen Jones, who is Jim Jones' oldest surviving son, he described laid waste to a number of rest stops along the way. It's like you after you eat Taco Bell.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So they had to drive from San Francisco to LA. Or no,
the opposite
LA
way around.
to
LA
San
to
Francisco.
San
But that's
Fran,
like 5.5
based.
hours with a monkey shitting all over the car.
And then they had to stop at every restroom to try and clean him up, I guess.
Oh.
They were devoted. So it's like you said, they named him Mr. Muggs because there was a mascot on NBC's Today Show from 1953 till 1957 who was a chimp called J. Fred Muggs. You're old enough. Do you remember that show?
I don't recall that one.
No,
I think I was only in my 30s then, though. So I don't know if I watched the Today Show.
Mr. Muggs started off by living in a cage behind the parsonage in Redwood Valley. And when I mean cage, I mean it's fucking huge. It was a small building. It had a small building attached to it, so he could go in there to stay warm and like Netflix and chill. And it was also attached to where the security detail would keep a 24-hour watch over the land. So they use every ounce of space. Now, this might come as a shock to some of you, but Jim Jones wasn't exactly the nicest to Mr. Muggs. And eventually, he would be passed along to longtime temple member Joyce Touchette, and the chimp was like another child to them. And he would even ride on the temple bus to church meetings. He would sit in the front. Mr. Muggs loved, respected, and sometimes feared Joyce, but she was the only one who could handle him and discipline him. She was totally his surrogate mother. Muggs went to Guyana on one of the first boats out there in December of 74. His cage had already been built. Again, his cage is huge, and it's one of the first structures of Jonestown. And in fact, Mr. Muggs is the first official resident of Jonestown. He thrived in his new environment. He was living his best life, as the kids say. And he became stacked. He weighed about 130 pounds, or that's just over 9 stone for the metric crew. Joyce Touchette, who ran the kitchen, and in fact her whole family were amongst the first to set up Jonestown and make it a community. She's still the best chimp mom in the whole wide world, looking after Mr. Muggs. He was super social with everyone. He played games like Keep Away or Tug of War. He would actually initiate Tug of War sometimes by dangling. She taught me how to dangle a blanket outside his cage as like an invitation, and he'd usually win because if Mr. Muggs felt like he was losing, he'd just start biting the shit out of your fingers.
See, that's what I'd be scared of. I'd be scared of that animal, chimpanzee, which has the strength of like 7 men, 7 grown men. It's the strength of 7 grown men and teeth sharp enough to rip your face off. I would be very nervous about being around this animal. Did they let him roam free, like throughout the encampment?
Not really, but yes, because he would go to the church meetings that they had. But when they're in Jonestown, they're having a lot more church meetings pretty much daily at this point. So they would let him out the cage, but he liked his cage. He would chill in his cage.
I think I'd rather drink the Flavor Aid than get my face ripped off by a chimpanzee.
Thank you very much for saying Flavor Aid. You get some points there. So Mr. Muggs is famous around this encampment. He had escaped when they had actually landed, and he had raided Port Katuma. So this is the same place where Senator Leah Ryan and 4 others would be shot to death by the People's Temple. the chimp, not Leo, had attempted to urinate on the Guyana Supreme Court marshal. He spat at people, and former members claims that Jones would threaten to throw interlopers to be ripped apart by the chimp. And he was used as a form of punishment for the younger children of Jonestown. I mean, he did some horrible things to as forms of punishment in Jonestown, but small children would be placed in his cage. We all know how angry and murderous chimps can be, but Mr. Muggs never ripped the face off a small child that we know about.
They're ticking time bombs, those chimpanzees.
They are, especially once they get to 18 months old when they reach sexual awareness. That's usually when they become super violent. He's already past that age and he isn't a violent chimp. So I think he was just just a chimp.
Yeah, but you never know. Like, who's the chimp that bit the face off of Charla Nash?
Yeah, yeah. But he was like 18 months old, which is like when they start becoming
he was
sexual.
Older. That chimp was older. Yeah, he was like, he had been in TV and they rescued him and he's retired.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
he had lived with with the lady for, I don't know, a long time. Like he could use the remote control, he could brush his teeth. And then one day, he was on animal Xanax. She'd given him animal Xanax.
Really strange
now that
behaviors.
I think about it, yeah. And then one day, something snapped.
Face off.
And he just ripped that woman's face off. Did you ever see the pictures of her?
Yeah, I did see the pictures and post-surgery as well.
I think she should do porn just to do it. Why not?
Do you think Caliban will be like that to you? He'll just be like, I'll take his whole face off one day.
Yeah,
it's like living with Nicolas Cage.
Like, biting my face off. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I'm willing to take the risk.
So I nearly said Nicolas Cage then. Mr. Muggs would flare out his hair and he would appear like, a cat does in it. When cats are angry and they're like, gosh, and they all flare up. He would do this when he was angry or anxious. And I imagine this is completely how he looked on the white night of November the 18th, 1978, when 918 people would be murdered in the name of revolutionary suicide. Despite the fact that he had never caused no harm to anyone, Mr. Muggs was mugged off. And he was the first to kind of be sent to the slaughter that night. Records are unclear as to who shot him. Maybe it was Jim Jones, but it's much more likely that it was a People's Temple guard, the same people who had been and killed Leo Ryan. Mm-hmm. During the death tape, 6 shots can be heard and identified. They can all be linked to the bullets that killed Jim Jones, his nurse, and in some ways, villain of Jonestown. She's like evil Lintel Skeletor. And the last to die, this is Annie Moore. And the 2 that killed Mr. Bugs and the 2 that killed Jonestown dogs. A dum-dum bullet, which is a round projectile, it's made to expand on contact. This is what killed Annie, and it's so forceful that on impact, it blew half her face clean off. It's the same caliber bullet used on Mr. Muggs, and according to the Guyana Assistant Police Commissioner Skip Roberts, Mr. Muggs was still alive when the defense force arrived in Jonestown some 36 hours after the massacre. Bless him.
Wow.
He just needed some brandy and bananas.
Yeah, that's shocking. So he lived like a full day and a half after the massacre.
Yeah, while all these 900 plus dead bodies are stinking up the joint. So he was a witness to it. If only they could have got him to talk in court and be like, what happened, Mr. Muggs?
Well, he was mortally wounded. I mean, they shot him twice.
And he did die shortly afterwards. His chimp mum, Joyce Touchette, along with her husband, David, daughter, Michelle, her very hunky son, Al. Can we put up a picture of Al when he's holding Mr. Muggs on the site?
Yeah, that is a good picture. We should post that.
He's super hunky. And her adopted children, David George and Neil Sean, they all died in Jonestown that night. They were very devoted.